The writing competition is put together by the Intercollegiate Horse Show Association, which is made up of about 9,000 riders. The Department of Physics and Astronomy is waiting on the arrival of its own 3D printers and all the opportunities that come with it. Ariana and Jordan, as the rate of homelessness is on the rise in the Fargo-Moorhead area, one NDSU professor created a day where students will not only read about poverty in a textbook, but feel the real-life struggles. I met with students at NDSU who stepped out of the classroom and into the shoes of a family living in poverty. Ariana and Jordan, one MSUM professor, worked in the United Nations and taught in schools across Ukraine and England before working at the university. He now uses that experience to take his students on a journey around the world while still sitting in their desks. I met with this professor to find out why this year is very significant to him. Physics students at MSUM who put on the physics show. With a vortex cannon, exploding balloons, and more intriguing experiments, the Society of Physics Students has a mission behind their show.
This is all about outreach. It's about showing people what physics can be. A lot of times we just see equations on a board or an old professor talking and using words that we've never heard before, and none of it really makes sense and it all seems very scary.
But these students have been able to convince the audience that physics can be far from scary. Observing the room to mapping out the experiment, the physics show is put together by the students.
Tyler, what did you do to these balloons?
While the show draws an audience of all ages, there is one group the society has a soft spot for.
I liked all of it.
The kids.
Well, they've got the rest of their lives to love science. Science is really, really cool. The earlier we can expose someone to it, and the earlier we can have them start asking questions about their world, the more time they have to explore.
Oh, that was just sweet!
And as for what the larger audience takes away from this,
I hope it's that science is fun. It's not just grease boards of equations. There's experiments that we do to test things in nature to prove and state why things work the way they do.
to the members of the Society of Physics Students, they may just be organizing a show. But for many of the families that show up, it's a day they don't want to be over.
Are we gonna do some more?
With photographer Naoya Uchida, Onize Ohikere, Campus News.
Okay, so I'll pay for clothing and then medical and food.
For one day, a room is transformed into a poor neighborhood. Families struggle to pay their bills, stay out of jail, and avoid being evicted.
It puts you in the role of a family who's going through poverty and trying to survive a month.
Each week of the month is divided into 15 minutes, and the families must try to survive all 4 weeks.
We have a reliable vehicle, but we're still paying a loan.
For one family, the struggle for survival hit them right from the beginning.
For me, I wanted to be the person in the family, knowing that I was adult, to kind of go around, pay the bills, get all this stuff done and work, but then finding out in the role of that, I was the disabled grandfather who got disability from the government, so I was, in a sense, limited to what I could really do.
Do we have enough money for that? We will after my paycheck.
As the struggle gets harder and people start to run for resources, the goal of the event becomes clear.
People living in poverty are just like you and me. They are facing their own share of struggles, they have their own stresses to worry about, and we can't make assumptions based on things that we think or judgments that we think if we've never lived it before.
After the simulation, students shared their experiences and takeaways from the session. One lesson that resounded around the room was a change in how they viewed the poor.
It gives me a lot of respect for them, and like most of the time they I guess.
You see people on the side of the road, you have your ideals of what they're doing with their life, what their life must be like, but this really gives a great perspective as to what their lives really are possibly like.
Do you want me to pay for all of them?
Though the students may have left their name tags and characters behind, the lessons learned will remain longer.
So consequently,
As Professor Conte lectures his students with a passion evident in his voice,
are you following events in South Africa?
one can easily tell he isn't your average professor.
He gets everybody involved in the classroom. He always does that, and it's kind of hard not to come to class without knowing anything. because he's gonna ask you questions. It's gonna be a surprise. He's gonna be like, oh, what do you think?
Originally from Sierra Leone, Dr. Conte's career as a professor in MSUM's Political Science Department began a while back.
This is my 30th year here.
For 30 years, 30 generations of students listened and learned from one man whose teaching and work experience circled the world. But this year, things seem to be changing as he starts to make his retirement plans.
It's gonna be hard.
Knowing how hard his absence will be on his students, Dr. Conte arranged to do things a little differently.
I decided to be on phased retirement primarily because I do not want to put my students in a situation whereby they will be left on their own.
This phased retirement means he will continue to work part-time as a professor and advisor until the last batch of students he taught graduates.
This outflow of people.
Conte's retirement leaves his students with mixed feelings.
He has this amazing resume and seems to have a really fulfilled career, so I'm happy for him that he can finally retire and take a break. I'm personally and selfishly a little disappointed because I'd like to take more classes from him.
But for him, the story doesn't end here.
Retirement does not mean that I'm going to abandon learning. It just means a change of pace.
Onizio Hikere, Campus News. It's hard to stay seated while listening to the Pedrito Martinez Group play. Described as one of the world's best Afro-Latin hand percussionists, Pedrito Martinez is the founder of the Latin Jazz Group.
I never went to school of music to learn this type of music. I learned in the street.
The band was invited by the MSUM School of Performing Arts to talk to students about their music.
From the point of like being able to share something with people that are kind of following in our steps somehow, and they're going to go through a similar path, and they're going to appreciate some information that we can pass on that might help them.
After the workshop, the band had a live performance to the joy of the students and some members of the community.
I love their music. It's very animated and salsa-like, and I just want to get up and dance.
While some students may have perceived the band as just an average act, they have received quite an impressive recognition.
We were nominated for the Grammys this year. We didn't win it, but we were nominated for Best Latin Jazz Album.
For some of the students, the style and rhythm of the music holds a personal meaning.
I'm from Venezuela, and we listen to a lot of salsa music as well. So I definitely that's my music.
For others, attending the concert was a chance to quench their curiosity.
I've never listened to Cuban jazz, and I guess I'm really curious to see what it's like. Because it's supposed to be, it's different than most Western jazz.
But whether it was their cultural roots or their interest in learning something new that made them show up, it turned out to be a fulfilling night for both the audience and the band members. With photographer Darby Fike, Onizio Hikere, Campus News.